Did I make mistakes? Some painfully? Definitely. And I believe I learned from them.
Up next, this disgraced ex-Democratic politician is trying to make a comeback, and I'm honestly lost for words at how audacious this is. Y'all might remember former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. He was governor during all the COVID fiasco, very authoritarian, kind of iron-fisted governor during all of that, but he was pretty grossly, I think, propped up and cheered on by a very slavish media, just giving him PR, and his brother was a CNN host at the time, and yet somehow no conflict of interest there. They did buddy segments together. It was a really wild time, but he ended up resigning in disgrace after several insane and really horrifying controversies brought him down as governor. Well, he's back, and he just announced a total rebrand. First of all, political rebrand, as if he's some sort of tough on crime moderate, when as governor he was pretty progressive on those same issues that he's now pivoting on. More importantly, he's back. He's running for mayor of New York City and just put out the most audacious, it's the audacity for me, message about why he is making a comeback, what values he stands on, and why he wants to be the next mayor of New York City. Take a listen to this clipped up couple of highlights from the long message he posted to X announcing his candidacy.
Hello, I'm Andrew Cuomo. We need a government with leadership that can take a stand and get things done intelligently, professionally, efficiently, effectively, and do it now. My philosophy as an elected official is simple. I work for you, not the politicians and not the special interests. I work as hard as you do, 24/7. I know what needs to be done, and I know how to do it. Experience matters. Leading New York City in the midst of a crisis is not the time or the place for on-the-job training. Did I always do everything right in my years of government service? Of course not. Would I do some things differently, knowing what I know now? Certainly. Did I make mistakes? Some painfully? Definitely. And I believe I learned from them, and that I am a better person for it. And I hope to show you that every day. We believe integrity in government is essential to ensure opportunity and justice for all. My friends, we can save our city. We are New Yorkers. We are a special breed. You have to be to live in this town. We are New York tough. Knock us down and we get back up, and we are then stronger and smarter for the experience. That is who we are. I know we can turn the city around, and I believe I can help. And that is why I announced my candidacy today for mayor of New York City. I am a lifelong New Yorker, and I love New York. And I want New York to not only survive, but for New York to thrive. For my children and for yours.
Y'all, the reason I'm so taken aback by the audacity of this man is that I covered him very closely when I was working as a journalist during the COVID era. And he talks about, I made a few mistakes. His bad policies resulted in potentially thousands of unnecessary deaths. And I'm going to get into all of it and explain. And then he tried to cover it up. And yet this man has just the sheer audacity to get up and talk about his strong leadership and integrity. Dude, what? I'll just take y'all on a little bit of a trip through memory lane about Andrew Cuomo's controversies when he was governor of New York during the pandemic. So he, just like a couple other states, enacted a very controversial policy at the beginning of the pandemic that forced nursing homes to accept patients who were positive for COVID-19 and prevented them from screening those patients and stopping them from coming into the nursing home or coming back into the nursing home after being in the hospital, even though elderly people, we knew very early on, were at the highest risk from COVID-19. So what that meant was that the reason this was being done, to be clear, was because they were worried about hospitals overflowing. So they wanted to make sure that hospitals could send patients back to the nursing homes, elderly people, so that hospitals wouldn't get overrun. That was a legitimate concern, though it didn't end up happening a lot. It was a legitimate concern. But this policy of forcing COVID positive patients into nursing homes, like the most vulnerable population, was a disaster for obvious reasons. It resulted in thousands of deaths of people in nursing homes potentially that may have been able to be prevented otherwise, and it just was obviously a mistake. And Cuomo basically admitted this because a couple months after it had been put in place, he took it back, but much of the damage had been done. You don't have to take my word for it. Even liberal media outlets have heavily scrutinized this policy and called it out. For example, ProPublica reported that New York's nursing homes suffered a larger percentage of deaths relative to total nursing home population than several states that did not have such a policy in place. We've heard from people who spoke out about how their family members died really cruel and terrible deaths in nursing homes and then in hospitals because they were infected, potentially as a result of this policy. Impossible to know in every single case, did it directly cause this or not? And then their family members died alone. They weren't allowed to have visitors under the COVID regime. It's really heartbreaking and terrible stuff. But you know what? I have some grace. I still think this policy was insane, but I have some grace for the fact that these leaders had to make incredibly difficult decisions on short notice with limited information. They had all these things happening at once. And I can understand that some people may have made these policies, at first at least, as kind of an honest mistake, even one that proved catastrophic. But what came afterwards was the furthest thing from honest, the absolute opposite of integrity or a man who learned from his mistakes. No, Andrew Cuomo's administration went through an extensive attempt to cover up the nursing home scandal, and then he also lied about it in front of Congress. And this all got exposed by Democratic officials, so his own side exposed him for this. As the New York Post reported at the time, the Democratic Attorney General, Letitia James, who is a progressive, pointed out that she did an investigation and found that COVID-19 deaths in New York nursing homes were 50% higher than the Cuomo administration claimed. We found out that they did this very misleading thing intentionally, where the Cuomo administration, if a person got sick in a nursing home with COVID and then went to a hospital, they didn't count it as a death in a nursing home if they died once they were at the hospital. And they intentionally did this and counted it that way to obfuscate the fact that so many deaths were happening in nursing homes. Now, Cuomo claimed in front of Congress that he was not involved in this report or any of the attempt to obfuscate data. The New York Times, not some conservative outlet, the New York Times reporting makes it clear that he lied. Emails suggest Cuomo undersold his role in altering COVID report. Earlier this summer, former Governor Andrew Cuomo squared off for a closed-door interview with 7 members of a Republican-led congressional subcommittee investigating how New York handled the early days of the coronavirus pandemic. Mr. Cuomo was asked repeatedly about a state health department report that deflected blame for the thousands of people who died of COVID in nursing homes in early 2020. Mr. Cuomo stood by the report, said he certainly did not review it, and insisted he had no memory of seeing it before its release. But a review of emails and congressional documents appears to show Mr. Cuomo not only saw the report, but personally wrote parts of early drafts. Governor's edits are attached for your review, Mr. Cuomo's assistant, Farrah Kennedy, wrote in an email sent to several members of the ex-governor's senior staff on June 23, 2020. They go on to explain that he was extensively involved in the drafting of this report, yet he told Congress that he had no memory of being involved with it. Sure, Andrew, sure. Now, I actually can't tell from the reporting whether he was under oath during that congressional testimony or not, because it was a closed doors thing, not a public hearing. So it's possible he wasn't under oath, but if he did testify that under oath, then he lied. And that's a crime to lie to Congress under oath. None of this is giving integrity to me. None of this is giving leadership to me. He made a massive mistake, rather than own up to it, tried to cover it up, and was exposed by his own party as having done so. All while, and get this, guys, pushing a book deal, a book about his leadership that netted him reportedly $5 million. The audacity to even show your face in public when you should honestly be in jail, and let alone show your face in public, let alone run for another office, is beyond me. And guys, we haven't even gotten to all of it. We haven't even gotten to all the tea and the lore about this man. We've only touched the surface. He also got Me Too'd very badly by a bunch of women who accused him of sexual harassment. As ABC7 reported, the Democratic Attorney General, Letitia James, issued a 168-page report, which included claims from 11 women, and concluded, "We find that the governor sexually harassed a number of current and former New York State employees by, among other things, engaging in unwelcome and non-consensual touching, as well as making numerous offensive comments of a suggestive and sexual nature that created a hostile work environment for women." So this 5-month investigation into him by his own party concluded that he sexually harassed numerous women. This was such a big scandal that he resigned from the governor's mansion, and his number 2, Kathy Hochul, became governor. She's now the governor. This is how he went out, and he's trying to make a comeback from the Believe All Women party. Again, guys, I am blown away by the audacity. But you know what? Like, he might even have a chance. He actually might have a chance. All I can say is that this man belongs in jail. He belongs in prison, not running for office. But welcome to 2025, I guess, where hypocrisy is the norm and standards are non-existent. What do you guys think? Can you believe Andrew Cuomo's audacity? Let me know in the comments.